spoke about the three great ways of love, knowledge, and action on the spiritual path.
Yes.
And I remember last week when we spoke, the question came up, where does one start?
Yes.
So maybe you could speak to that or give some advice to where one might start that maybe did not grow up reading the Bible or is now in their 20s or 30s or 40s, had a very different upbringing.
When I was 26 and was looking for someone to meditate, the only place I found at that time, before meditation was widely known in the West, was a school in London. And it was considered very important that meditation was taught one-to-one and subsequently guided one-to-one. And it was an awful nuisance for me as a young farmer, 150 miles away in Derbyshire, having to go down to London just for a 20-minute session with one of the tutors who asked me how meditation was going, and I'd tell him, and he'd talk to me, and then 20 minutes later I'd have to come home again. Gosh, what a waste of money and time that seemed. But extraordinarily enough, I continued doing it, and I attended the School of Meditation for 20 years. It happened to coincide with the growth of my growing vegetables. I used to sell vegetables in London, so I combined selling vegetables with attending the school. And I wasn't always being tutored in due course. After I'd had more experience, I did a bit of tutoring myself. But it was always done one-to-one. We did, of course, have groups, but the essential teaching of meditation was one-to-one. And this began to make more sense to me when I realized that there are these two great paths. There's the path of devotion or love, the path of knowledge, people who like to go into philosophy and read books and go on these sort of things. And there was the action people who sort of people like Mother Teresa, for example, who very much into hands-on help, that sort of thing. And in any sort of guidance, these need to be recognized. So what's appropriate to say to one person isn't the same for another. That's why I don't like sort of exposing too much about meditation on internet, because you're listening to a multitude of people and everyone is different. So what's appropriate to one is not for another. Very generally, I can just say that for those that have a strong inkling to love, well, follow your heart. Do what you love. And don't be afraid if your love expands or includes other things as well as it grows, which it most likely will. We start off, as I did, perhaps loving my pet rabbit, my mice, and I had a lizard too at one time. I made a little wall to keep it in. I didn't think that lizards could climb walls. Next morning, it had gone. So we learn. And now, well, what do I not love? So, and similarly with knowledge, we start off with one book. We have one sort of person we think's the cat's whiskers, and we follow him, and then you keep reading and you discover other people. And so it is with the way of knowledge. And those that get into action, well, I had my years of wanting to make the world a better place and doing my best. And well, so that also grows. What more can I say about it, really? They say the heart is the most direct, but it's also, you see, the love is blind, the old saying, so you can sort of you get moments of high ecstasy, but then you fall and you go down into awful despair. You lose your love, and your whole heart's broken. Your world crumbles away, doesn't it? That's the way of it, up and down. So a little bit of knowledge to the lovers of this world is helpful to give a bit of balance, and similarly, a bit of love is useful to the heady, brainy people to make them a bit more human, maybe. And a bit of action goes down well too. It's really we're all a bit of all those three ways, but we tend to have a tendency more to one than the others. Balance, my dear. As my granddad used to say to me, moderation in all things. That's what St. Paul said, moderation in all things. Well, I'm not a very moderate man. I tend to go to extremes, and so I get my fingers burnt. Well, no fool like an old fool, they say. You never learn. Oh, well. My poor dad. What I put my poor mother and father through, abandoning all they'd done for me and going off to waste my life in South America. Oh dear. That's where my heart led me, to their despair. But I did come home again. Oh dear. I've got no answers to life. Muddle through.
John, would you say whichever path one is on or is pulled towards, the root still is very much linked to meditation?
Well, some people just can't meditate, can they? It's just not their thing at all. Others take to it like I did, like a duck to water. You know, some people are really scared of meditation. They're scared of silence. They're scared of being alone. They're scared of the void, the great emptiness, which those who meditate discover is actually far from being empty. It's the fullness of everything. But some people will never swallow that. If you teach that for the whole of their lives, they just won't have it. They've got to have some identifiable purpose to their lives. So meditation is for those that want it. In fact, that's the only qualification. I remember being taught that what's needed for meditation, you've got to want it. Some do. I wanted it. Always have. That's what's kept me going. But my sister always thought I was crazy. Dad talked of my mystical nonsense. It wasn't his thing at all. A countless number of people who said to me that I sit there hour after hour meditating. Why don't you do something useful? So I feel an awful failure in that company. What do you do? They say. How could I answer? No, my dear, meditation. Well, although I like to say everybody does meditate naturally. You see, we don't call it meditation. We just call it playing your hobby or something, do something you like doing, even if it's going snorkeling or you know, the latest winter sporting or something like that. It's all really meditation. In fact, isn't breathing a very good meditation? Who doesn't breathe? You're just looking out of the window. What is not meditation really once you widen it up?
I find it very helpful, John, to hear that you were definitely experiencing being the odd duck out, because
Yes.
I think a lot of us can relate to that. Why don't you just do something with your life?
Yes,
I've heard that many times.
yes, yes. Well, yes, I get quite a bit of correspondence from young people feeling that way. One of the great gifts, I remember my old dad saying to me, one of the few things you can give when you're old is your experience. I feel just the same now. What else can I give, my dears? Just lifelong experience.
John, what kept you going when, obviously you experienced judgment or being misunderstood, but you also had this very strong pull, and then you had your experience with Christine.
Yes.
But before that, what kept you going when I'm sure you've faced many moments of despair.
Of course, in your real moments of despair, nothing does. That's what despair is, isn't it? You lose your reason for existence. This is not consistent. If I say love, don't think that's like a constant light ever always beckoning you on, because it gets lost, you see. If you compare, you see, you lose it, just like you lose your girl in this world, and you just face despair. And so then, if you're lucky, and sooner or later another one appears. You fall in love again, but it's never the same, and somehow you never really. But it's honestly, I feel so inadequate to really answer these questions. You know what comes to my mind? There used to be a well-known poem that was often quoted. I think it's rather gone out of fashion now. But there was a man called T.S. Eliot, who was an English academic, and he wrote something. He said, with the drawing of this love and the voice of this calling, we will not cease from exploration. Amen to that. But you don't always hear the call, and love's by no means always in focus. That's why discipline is so helpful. It's also essential, really, because discipline keeps you going during the times when otherwise you'd give up. There are few things more important to spiritual work than discipline, my dears. Get the good habit and do it. Meditate night and morning, especially through those times when you don't want to do it. That's when it's most important. Otherwise, you'll wobble around and more too easily fall away. Just like Jesus describes in the parable of the sower. Many are called, but few are chosen. Not many keep going. The world's full of temptations to pull us away. But those that keep going will be rewarded, that's for sure.